How do you score a goal against an enemy who isn't there? How do you celebrate a victory in a stadium where, just days earlier, the stands echoed with the screams of thousands being tortured? Santiago, Chile, November 21st, 1973. The afternoon sun beats down on the pristine green grass of the Estadio Nacional. 15,000 spectators sit in the concrete stands, a strange, suffocating silence hanging over them. 11 Chilean football players stand in their bright red jerseys, lining up for the national anthem. They look across the halfway line. There is nothing but empty space. No opposing team, no goalkeeper, no defense. Across the globe, the mighty Soviet Union has boycotted the match, refusing to step foot on what they call a blood-stained pitch. Yet, FIFA has ordered that the game must go on. The referee blows his whistle. The Chilean captain touches the ball forward. They begin to pass the ball to one another, moving up the field entirely unopposed, under the watchful eyes of military guards holding automatic rifles. They are playing a ghost match. They are participating in what legendary writer Eduardo Galeano called the most pathetic match in the history of football. This is not a story about sport. This is a journey into the dark heart of the Cold War, where a football pitch became a concentration camp. A world-governing body turned a blind eye to horror, and 11 men were forced to stage a theatrical lie to save their own lives. To understand how football descended into this surreal nightmare, we have to look at the world in 1973. The global Cold War wasn't just a battle of nuclear threats between Washington and Moscow. It was actively tearing South America apart. 3 years earlier, Chile had democratically elected a Marxist president, Salvador Allende. The Soviet Union celebrated him. The United States feared him. Then came Tuesday, September 11th, 1973. Hawker Hunter jet fighters screamed over Santiago, dropping bombs directly onto the presidential palace. A brutal military coup d'état, led by General Augusto Pinochet, seized control of the country. President Allende died inside the burning palace. Within hours, a ruthless military junta abolished civilian rule and began rounding up anyone suspected of left-wing sympathies: students, journalists, artists, and union leaders. But the military dictatorship had a logistical problem. The regular prisons and police cells filled up in less than a day. They needed a massive, secure containment facility immediately. They chose the Estadio Nacional, the pride of Chilean sport. Overnight, the locker rooms became overcrowded cells. The administrative offices became interrogation chambers. The tunnel leading out to the pitch became a gauntlet of terror. According to the Red Cross, over 40,000 political prisoners were dragged into the stadium. Army vehicles blasted rock music at maximum volume through the stadium loudspeakers to try and drown out the desperate cries of those being tortured underneath the stands. People disappeared into the shadows of the stadium, never to be seen again. And yet, right in the middle of this state-sponsored terror, a massive problem emerged on the international calendar. Chile was scheduled to play the Soviet Union in a two-legged playoff, with the final spot for the 1974 World Cup in West Germany completely on the line. The first leg of the playoff was scheduled for September 26th in Moscow, just 2 weeks after Pinochet's bloody coup. The Chilean national team was thrown into a state of absolute panic. Several of their top players, including legendary forward Carlos Caszely and winger Leonardo Vélez, were well-known, outspoken socialist sympathizers. Caszely's own mother would later be arrested and tortured by the regime. The players were terrified that if they left the country, they would never be allowed back, or worse, their families would pay the price while they were away. The Pinochet regime, however, demanded they fly to Moscow. They needed the football team to act as a public relations shield to show the world that Chile was operating normally. When the Chilean team landed in the freezing air of Moscow, the geopolitical tension was razor-sharp. The Soviet government had officially cut off all diplomatic ties with the new military junta. At the airport, Soviet border guards harassed the Chilean stars, detaining icons like Elias Figueroa and Carlos Caszely on the tarmac for hours over minor passport irregularities. The match at the Central Lenin Stadium was played under an iron curtain of censorship. The Soviet authorities banned all international journalists and television cameras from entering the stadium. They wanted to crush Chile in complete secrecy. But the Chilean players dug deep. Playing for the families surviving back home under a dictatorship, the defense put on a masterclass. Figueroa and Alberto Quintano fought like gladiators in the backline, enduring 90 minutes of relentless Soviet attacks. Against all historical odds, the match ended in a 0-0 draw. The Soviet media and government were utterly humiliated on their own soil. Everything would now be decided in the second leg, back in Santiago. Back at the Estadio Nacional. The Soviet Union immediately announced that they would never set foot in the Estadio Nacional, accurately pointing out to the international press that the venue had been transformed into a fascist concentration camp. They formally requested that FIFA move the match to a neutral country, like Argentina or Peru. Pinochet's junta flatly refused. Moving the match would be an admission of guilt to the entire planet. They insisted the game take place in the capital to prove to the world that Santiago was peaceful and orderly. To resolve the dispute, FIFA sent an official inspection delegation to Santiago on October 24th, led by its vice president. What followed was a chilling masterclass in authoritarian deception. The military knew exactly when the inspectors were arriving. Hours before the FIFA officials walked through the gates, soldiers forced thousands of terrified, malnourished prisoners into the dark, subterranean locker rooms and concrete tunnels beneath the stadium structure. They were ordered to remain absolutely silent, at gunpoint. Armed soldiers hid in the corridors out of sight. The FIFA inspectors walked out onto the beautiful pitch. They walked around the field, looked up at the empty stands, and breathed in the fresh air. Just a few feet beneath their leather shoes, thousands of citizens were huddled in pitch darkness, praying to be heard. One of those prisoners, a politician named Gregorio Mena Barales, watched the inspectors through a tiny crack in a door. He later wrote, "The commission walked around the court, looked with distant eyes at the prisoners, and gave the opinion, 'In the stadium, you could play.'" FIFA officially declared the stadium fit for competition, stating that the political situation in the country was an internal matter that didn't affect the sport. True to their word, the Soviet Union refused to travel to Chile. They boycotted the match, accepting the financial fines and the competitive disqualification from FIFA. The logical path forward would have been for FIFA to simply declare a walkover victory for Chile and call it a day. But the Chilean Football Federation, facing immense pressure from the military junta, demanded that the event must take place. They had tickets to sell, a political narrative to broadcast, and a stage to manage. November 21st, 1973. Just days before the match, the military quickly transferred the remaining prisoners out of the stadium to a remote prison camp in the harsh Atacama Desert, trying to clean up the final traces of blood. The gates opened. 15,000 confused fans filed into the massive stadium. The referee, Erich Linnemeyer of Austria, walked out alongside the linesman. The Chilean players walked out behind him. They lined up on the pitch, looking directly at an entirely empty half of the field. The referee blew his whistle to start the match. The Chilean players touched the ball. They began to pass it in a highly rehearsed sequence, moving slowly up the right flank. There was no opposition tracking their runs, no tackles coming in. They passed the ball from midfielder to winger, eventually driving deep into the opponent's penalty area. According to pre-match team agreements, it was decided that the final shot had to be taken by the team captain, Francisco Chamaco Valdez. He received the ball right in front of the empty, unguarded white net. He tapped it in from close range. The ball hit the back of the net. A few scattered fans cheered. Others stared in sheer bewilderment. The scoreboard flashed. Chile 1, Soviet Union 0. Since there was no opposing team to take the ball back to the center circle to restart the match, the referee blew his whistle one final time, bringing a permanent end to the shortest, most surreal game in human history. It had lasted exactly 17 seconds. FIFA later updated the official records to reflect a standardized 2-0 walkover victory for Chile, handing them their ticket to the 1974 World Cup. To give the fans in the stadium their money's worth that day, the federation had arranged a friendly match against a touring Brazilian club team immediately after the Ghost Match concluded. In a twist of dark sporting comedy, Chile lost that actual match 5-0. The Chilean national team flew to West Germany for the 1974 World Cup, but their tournament was a disaster. They were eliminated swiftly in the very first group stage, failing to win a single match. Carlos Caszely, carrying the immense emotional weight of his mother's torture, famously became the first player in football history to ever receive a red card in a World Cup tournament during their opening match against West Germany. When the team returned home, Caszely famously refused to shake General Pinochet's hand during a public reception, staring directly into the eyes of the dictator in defiance. General Augusto Pinochet would go on to rule Chile with an iron fist for 17 bloody years. Decades later, democracy was finally restored to the nation. Today, the Estadio Nacional is once again a place of sport, music, and joy. But if you visit the stadium in Santiago, you will notice something profound. Deep within the public gallery, an entire section of the original wooden stadium seats has been left completely untouched, unpainted, and vacant. It is blocked off from the public, surrounded by a simple, elegant memorial fence. Every single night, when the modern stadium floodlights turn on, that empty, dark section is lit up in isolated silence. It stands as a permanent tribute to the political prisoners who were held there, a stark reminder of the time that the beautiful game was dragged into the dark and 11 men were forced to play against ghosts. A stadium can be cleaned, but the pitch always remembers.